Hello, friends, and welcome to I Know I Belong When, a podcast where bold voices, curious stories, and authentic impact amplify knowing that you are invited, seen, heard, and needed. I am your host, Christopher Bylone. This is more than a conversation. It is a movement, a mirror, a megaphone, one where raw truth meets radical hope. Welcome back to the show. What if the thing that broke you became the thing that built you? From adversity to advocacy, today's guest did not just outrun a past of abuse, addiction, homelessness, and academic failure. He flipped the script. One chef saw the spark, chose kindness over judgment, and lit a fuse. That open door did not just change a life, it started a movement. He is Chason Forehand, founder of HR4U and the visionary behind Transformation Kitchen, a program where culinary training meets life skills and holistic approach. We are talking real mentorship, real opportunity, and real belonging for people who have heard no more times than most of us can count. Call it knife skills and life skills served with a side of second chances. This is not just redemption. It is a blueprint for community transformation, turning a single yes into a system that lifts neighborhoods. It's time to get cooking. We have souls to feed. Chason, welcome to I Know I Belong When.
Wow. That is the most incredible intro I have ever heard in my life. I, I'm like sold. Let's go. That was
Well,
fantastic, man.
Chason, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. But it's your intro, right?
Yep.
I'm just reading what I learned. This is the movement that you helped create. So thank you for the work you do and being part of being an early guest of the I Know I Belong When podcast.
No, hey, it's my honor to be here, man. And I love what you're doing. So I was just
Well, I
putting your
appreciate that.
cards. I was just putting your cards that I got from you in thank you notes to people from our recent Beef for
Oh,
Good. And I'm putting these cards into I'm writing handwritten cards to people to thank them. And then I'm putting the cards that you sent me, I Know I Belong When, and talking about your podcast into all of these envelopes. And I'm going, this is cool. This is way cool.
well, yeah, thank you. So for those who are listening, who are needing to understand what we just referenced, we have cards that say you belong here. And the idea is that, and then for those who are watching on video, there are cards and it says, give this card to someone who needs a reminder that their bold, authentic self is welcomed, valued, and loved.
Yeah. Love it.
And so I'm asking folks to join the movement to be a belonging champion and give these cards out to others. So if you're interested in getting a card, come to the Innovation Unbiased website and you can find the link to request cards to be sent to you. And I will send you a handwritten note thanking you for being a belonging champion. So Chason, thank you for the shameless plug here.
No,
I
I love
appreciate
it.
it.
I think I was in the top 5. I think I was one of the first 5. So I'm like so excited.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. So, okay, let's dive into the conversation. There's a phrase out there, we do not just flip eggs, we flip lives. So what does it mean to you personally, and how does it shape your leadership style?
Well, I think the thing to remember is there's a lot of great programs that do fantastic work in the universe. There's a but with that because sometimes we get in our own way in the nonprofit
Mm,
world and in the social good entity world, in that we can't see beyond what we're doing to see the future and the evolution. And for me, it means what was my path to being able to get to a place where I thrived, didn't just survive. And how do we
mm,
emulate that? Remove the ego and the hubris and take our names out of it and focus in on how many people can we realistically impact, create a community, keep people in that community, and have them thrive long term. Like, this isn't just, okay, you get a living wage job, but what happens to you in 6 months? What happens to you in a
mm,
year? Are you back in the cycles? that you were in before that created the things that were destroying your life? Or are you thriving? How do we make sure that that is a long-term solution? So everything I
Yes.
do, every single thing I do is about what is that long-term, long game vision?
Yeah, I think so for me, where it's hitting home for me this morning is my boys are adopted out of foster care. And when we were having the conversation about bringing them into our family, one of the things that the social workers were wanting to ensure is that we were breaking the cycle, right? Their parents were products of the system. And so it was history repeating itself. And so we needed to figure out how were we going to break that cycle so that they could have that thriving life that we want for everyone. So that thank you for doing this work, right? And that's where it's hitting home for me this morning. So talk to me about your journey with HR4U. Where did it begin? What was the moment you knew this work was your calling?
Well, this is interesting because I fell into human resources from being in the culinary world,
Mm,
being a person that was asked to hire, to fire, to have courageous conversations with people, to run organizations at a higher level that were in multiple cities, multiple states, multiple countries. I needed to be better because the go-to format, even today in 2025, for some culinary organizations is to have the come to Jesus meeting out back by the dumpsters, and that's HR. And I'm like,
yeah.
that's horrible. That's really, truly horrible. So, how do we elevate that? So, I wanted to learn, I wanted to do better. I'm a kid that was forcibly removed and incarcerated in my third year of college. I never finished school. I was a bright
Mm,
kid that should have done all the right things, but I got in my own way. And
mm,
so I want people to learn and to grow and to thrive themselves, but I needed to learn things on my own and I needed to get to a place where I was okay. And I'm
yep.
still doing the work even at this time in this age. You never stop doing the work
No,
so
you
that
don't.
I can continue to help people. And so I
Mm,
mean, I think realistically, when we can focus on ourselves to make sure that we are doing and championing all the work, then we can help others and we continuously do that. And so I fell into HR. I came to a place where my company, because I'm a fractional HR guy that works with social good entities only,
mm,
I was working, I put in 900 pro bono hours in the span of a year and a half, 2 years during the pandemic, because a lot of social good entities lost all of their volunteers.
right.
And I kept seeing this overwhelming hubris, ego. Look what I've created from executive directors, from CEOs. I kept seeing organizations patting themselves on the back for doing work that was face level and not deep, that there was no vision. It was like, oh, we just had 100 people go through our program. We're awesome. Yay. Okay. Where are those people now? Oh, I don't know.
Mm,
So to me, it was like, wow, there's a real problem here. And then I
right.
started looking even deeper, and it's like there's 67% of all new nonprofits fail in the first 5 years. This is almost as bad as the restaurant industry. And then I'm digging in, even more. And the more data I got, and the more I started to dig in, the more I realized there's an opportunity here to help. So we started out in 2022 as an advocacy group with one of our programs, Mentor for Good, being how do we help other organizations build a financially stable environment, because we've been financially stable since the moment we started. We built
Mm,
this with my wife and I's funding, and then we kicked it off, and it's been profitable ever since.
Wow.
Have we made millions of dollars? No, unfortunately, we haven't. But I say the word yet because we're keep growing each year and we keep doing great things because we have a strong foundation and we have a lot of people that care about the work that we do and are extremely involved. We'll get into probably some of that data as we go along in this conversation. So what we want to do, the this is a very long answer to your question, but what we want to do is really impact not just organizations that are trying to do good, but interconnect and collaborate with as many people, nonprofit and for profit, so that we can break systems and cycles
Mm,
and help more people. That's the
yeah.
true win. That's the win, win, win for everyone. And
Yeah.
and that process is working.
No, that's great. I mean, I think it's really important that we also we're calling out the fact that even though the people who are doing the work, right, trying to create social change, they also need help, right? They need to make sure that they're treating their people with kindness, their volunteers with kindness,
Absolutely.
right? I used to also be in the nonprofit world, and I used to joke, how do I fire a volunteer? Right. Because sometimes you need to have that conversation to be like, yeah, this isn't working. But we needed to do it with kindness, right? We
Yeah.
needed to make sure that they understood what was not working and how do we get them to improve so that they can stay a volunteer, right? And so I think that that's really important. You check your ego at the door. How do we do that work? So kudos and thank you for diving into this area which is very much needed. Okay, so I want to kind of redirect where we're going with this conversation a little bit. So, one of the most important things I feel for the conversations that I'm trying to create and am creating through this podcast is making sure that we talk about names because getting somebody's name right at the beginning is the first act of knowing that you belong, right? So, in your work with marginalized communities, how do you ensure that people know that they are seen and heard, especially those names and stories who are often overlooked?
They are literally comes down to one thing, and that's listen. And we talk about actively listening and we talk about what that looks like and we people will talk about, a process or whatnot. I think it's just heartfelt. I think when you genuinely care and you come from a place of curiosity and you listen, now all of a sudden you're hearing the story, you're hearing the name, you're understanding the journey. And I think that has to be the beginning.
No, you're right. It all the, the way I end the podcast is, belonging and it starts with listening, right? Because if we are truly wanting to welcome people into the space, we have to listen to their story and understand it and listen with the intent to learn from them, not react. And so, how are we learning about those individuals? And so, thank you for that. Can you share a story about a time when saying someone's name changed the trajectory of their experience or their sense of belonging?
Yeah, the very first student that we had, the very first person that we worked with before we even opened up our TK in Nicaragua was a guy
Mm,
that goes by the name Tez, and his name is Artez, but he likes to be called Tez. And here's a guy who's a felon, who has had a lot of life thrown at him. He's gotten in his own way, and he's had
mm,
difficulty being hired. And listening to him tell his story, talk about his journey, even sitting down with him in my office here and recording part of that journey and just saying, "Hey, I want you just to tell your life story. Tell me what you're comfortable saying." And him saying, "I'm not comfortable saying." So we stopped the recording and we never showed those pieces. And some of the stuff that we released were only fragments that he was okay with. So that I mean, that
mm,
everything about that, they're like, "Alright, I'm not gonna use your name and your journey to weaponize what we're doing. to
Yeah.
literally create something from your pain and suffering. I want you to feel comfortable in what we're saying about you and through you. And that created that trust to where we were able to get him a living wage job, to have him work with our director of student wellness so that he got wellness coaching, really almost therapy, if you will, and which he had never had before in his life. And so him getting used to having those conversations with Sarah O'Brien and myself and getting comfortable talking about how he's feeling and being comfortable understanding that we're going to respect whatever the boundaries are that you need to have around you. Again, going back to listening
Hmm.
to where you feel good about this journey and how your growth is impacted. That taught me a lot about sitting and pausing and how am I listening?
Mm.
Because I'm all excited. I'm like, I want to tell your story. I want to tell your journey. I want to do all these things. And then realizing, hey, hey, he's not comfortable with that.
Right.
This is all new for him. And so if it's really truly about him and helping him, and it's not about Chason, it's not about TK, it's not about HR4U, then I'm going to honor what he wants.
Right. It's
And I
putting
think
him in the driver's seat.
yes, and I think that applies to everything we do from here on out. Like, we learn from that to be like, "Okay, this is what it really means, and this is
Right.
how it's going to impact us." And so it was a big part of what we did in Matagalpa, Nicaragua. We're not gonna force people on camera. We're not gonna sit here and record stuff that people don't wanna record. We're not gonna tell journeys of people that are not comfortable telling that journey. We wanna talk about the people who want to share in their own way. And what is that
Right.
and how do we honor their story and their journey in the way that they wanna have it told? So,
Right.
it was a
That's
great lesson,
beautiful.
and it was a lesson for us as an organization, for me personally, and it's carried on in all the work that we do since then.
That's great. I think it's really important that even though you're doing something really positive for them and helping them get their life on a journey that's going to bring them happiness and joy, there's a lot of pain that brought them to that space. And so we don't want to what's the word I'm looking for? Proselytize off of their pain if they're not willing and ready to share that story, right? And sometimes those of us in positions of power or other people in positions of power, we don't think about that. And we share people's stories probably when we didn't ask permission to share them.
Yeah.
Um, because they're telling it to us and they're like, well, if they're telling us to us, we can share it with others. And so how do we make sure that we're asking consent and making sure that people are comfortable with what's happening? So I appreciate that lesson. So talk to me about now coming back to Chasen. What has been a defining moment for you that you knew you truly belonged either in your professional or in your personal life?
I think really it's about the people that I surround myself with. I think one of the biggest things is like the community that you and I are both part of, the Outlier Project. And so many times I've questioned and said to myself since 2022 when I joined, I've had conversations with Kathy and said, I don't feel like I belong here. I'm not climbing 7 mountains in 7 days or writing these, I'm not a professional athlete or an Olympian or all of these other things that some of these people come from. And Kathy just looked at me and goes, "But look at what you are doing and look at where you've come from in order to do those things that you are doing. If you're not an outlier, who the heck is an outlier?" And I mean it, and I'm paraphrasing for what she said, but she's had this
Right.
conversation with me a couple of times where it's like, come on, stop that. And I think it's I'm using that as an example because it's the place personally where I've come to over the last 3 to 5 years where I've said, I'm not the most outgoing. I'm an introvert. I'm not the most outgoing person and personality, but I feel comfortable now sharing my story and telling people about my life, and I feel safe to do so. And it's not just in the outliers, it's other communities as well, but mainly that's like the outliers were the first community. They were the very
Mm,
first community that made me feel safe to say. And there were 65 people at our event in March when I told for the first time my whole story in like 15 minutes. Like, here's my journey and here's my why. 29 of those 65 people were outliers that had come
wow.
in from out of town, whatever, to be at that event. And it was, it meant the world to me. It really did. And so again, feeling in that community and then starting to see it in a few others, but mainly in the outliers, how I feel safe to share and not be judged and not be chastised or not be criticized. That's the beginning. Uh, Belonging for me is about being around people that I trust and that I can share with and that I feel safe and heard and seen and valued. So that's where I'm at.
That's really powerful as well because for people to know that they belong, they need to be safe.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about being comfortable because you alluded to that there was a lot of still uncomfortableness that you're still
Yeah.
having,
Yeah.
right? But you at least feel safe enough to be uncomfortable, right? And so
Right.
that is that that you know you belong because you're safe and you can be vulnerable with folks, right? And you can be your authentic self and open the door and allow us to come in. I talk about, if we want to be invited into spaces, we also have to invite people into our space.
Absolutely.
Right? And so if I keep a door shut, how can people be invited into me and know that I can be invited into them, right? So it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
If we want the doors to be open, we also have to have our doors open as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about having moments that we knew that we belonged. But it would not be an unfiltered conversation if we did not touch on some moments where belonging didn't work. So, can you talk to me about moments when belonging wasn't happening for you and how did you work through those moments to try to turn the tide?
Well, the last corporate job that I had, I was at the biggest role I've ever been in, making the most money I ever had. I had an office on Fifth Avenue in New York City. I thought, man, I have I have hit the lottery. I mean, I have this is the epitome. I'm doing stuff that has taken all the work that I've done in the past and using all of it, plus helping me grow. It's pushing me to do things that I hadn't done. And it's a huge, huge job. And it started out so great with this illusion and mask of control and trust and all the things that we look for. And then that eroded over time.
Mm,
And one of the things that really got to me, where I started to feel bad about myself, and then I also started to feel like, man, I am not heard. I am not seen. I am not valued in this place, is that every time the owner of the company who would openly overturn decisions from anyone and everyone at any point in time, unchecked, started doing really awful things to people that we had spent a lot of time to develop and bring into the
Mm,
organization and really start to pour into and to try to create this culture of caring and empathy and just forward thinking. Every time he would go against that flow and would override something that I had done, he came back and he would give me these huge raises. Over the course of the first year and a half, over $30,000 in increases to my salary, which was already ridiculous to begin with. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I feel terrible. Like, I feel bad going in. Some people just take the
mm,
money and run, and I started
right.
really feeling like, "Man, this I I I feel unclean. I feel dirty because is this on the backs of these people that have suffered through what this person was doing?" And I just and it came to where there was a personal moment where there was a thing in my family, there was something that I needed to do and take care of things on a personal level, and I'm at a store opening, and I'm just being berated over the phone. Meanwhile, we've got someone who's ready to pass away, and that feeling of, "I don't care about you, I don't care about your family, I care that you are there making this happen, doing this thing," and I was like, "Man, I that's it. I
Right.
continue down this path of being in this space to affect other people and affect myself. I need to go and do other things."
Yeah. If people are not treating others with humanity, how can they belong? Right. And so what happened to you is the person did not see you as a human. They saw you as a robot
Yeah, means to an end.
doing means to an end, did not understand what was going on in your world. How could you be present and do the best you can to help open a store when you are dealing with a family member who is going to die, right? And so how talk about the inhumanity and breaking your sense of belonging, not just to the organization that you worked for, but belonging to your family because you're needing to make choices between, am I here doing this job or am I with the family that needs my care and support and strength? And so that individual took that from you and you made a choice to say, you know what, it's not my job to fix you.
Yeah,
I'm going to find other communities where I'm treated with dignity and respect, and that's where I know that I'm going to belong.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Chasen, you get to sit in a very unique seat by working with organizations across the nonprofit sector and other industries in helping them create cultures of belonging. So, what are some of the practice and rituals that you see organizations doing that work well to help sustain cultures of belonging within their organizations?
I think having a definite one-on-one and feedback loop, what no matter how you structure it or how you whatever you call it, but from the moment you have hired someone, the onboarding process, the way you open the door for them to be able to give feedback in a non-judgmental and safe environment, and how you create this connection with them with one-on-one feedback and group feedback to help them not only see the entirety of the organization, but also to see how they can leverage what they're doing to help themselves and the company and feeling that value, I think that's huge. So to me, it's all about the communication. It's all about giving the resources that people need. Do they have all the tools they need in order to do the job that you've asked them to do? And are you constantly feeding them and giving them uh, that feedback loop of what do you need and how's it going? And you know, what's going on in your world today? What lights you up? And I think it's asking the right questions and listening to people and seeing the patterns. So understanding who they are as a human being, we don't if we don't ask the questions, we don't know that they've got someone that they're caregiving for in their household while they're doing this job. And maybe, oh, they have to travel even farther because they're staying with that person, several days a week or whatever. How do you care enough about a human being to where you're going to frame the work to make sure they have what they need and that they're consistently feeling, okay, I can do this. I can make this happen. They get the resources and the tools and the environment and the safety, and that you can, from the moment you hire them through the process. And I think that is, for me, is the biggest thing. How do you set that up? Who's responsible for that? How do those how do the people that are responsible have their own feedback loop and they get their cup refilled? And, how do we give
Mm,
resources to them? Because a lot of that middle management is responsible for a lot of this, and we don't give them the things they need. So they get burnt
right.
out, they get crispy, and no one's asking them about their family or,
Right.
it's so
Right.
I think it's all the way up the chain. There has to be from the top to the bottom and vice versa. There has to be this flat line instead of a pyramid. There has to be this flat line of we're all going to work together to create what we create. And so
Yeah.
that
And so, how do you measure that impact, right? How do you make sure that you are understanding the value add you are bringing to your clients and other organizations that you're working with to help them achieve belonging in their organization?
I think one of the easiest ways to see whether or not if we're talking about like my work with other organizations or the internal work in organizations is retention. Retention is a huge factor for saying, "Hey, are we winning or are we losing?
Right.
Are people staying with us because they see all the things that we're doing?" And are I love I heard Lindsay Dowd talk about I love Lindsay Dowd. I heard her talk about this in another podcast that she was in. It's about those stay interviews. Are you talking to
Yes.
people and having stay interviews with them? Forget the exit interview. Yeah, an exit interview is an important process, but are you having the stay interviews? Are you talking to them on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis about what they need and what they're doing? So you can look at there's a lot of data to look at, but one of the first things I look at as far as impact is concerned is retention.
That's really important. Yes, because if your people are leaving, they're leaving for a reason,
Yeah,
right? And so, how do you make sure you're understanding about why they're leaving? But we also know that if when people leave, it's going to cost a lot more money to replace them.
my goodness.
So how do we keep them in our organization so we're not spending all of that time and institutional knowledge walking out the door?
Yeah,
Well, Jason, this has been a riveting conversation. It is taking us down paths I did not expect, which is great. I love it. So, to wrap things up, I am asking each person who joins the podcast to answer the following statement: I know I belong when. So, Jason, finish the sentence. I know I belong when.
I feel safe to be myself.
Mm, feel safe to be yourself. That just gets to the heart of it, right? Because if you're not safe, how can you be, as we said, uncomfortable in the space to be yourself? Well, thank you, friend Chasen. This has been an absolute pleasure and a great reminder that belonging is not a destination. It is a practice and it starts with listening. Friends, if this episode challenged you to move beyond your comfort zone, please give the show a follow and add a comment on what you will do today to be a champion of belonging. Thank you for listening. Know that your bold, authentic self is welcomed, valued, and loved. Until next time, remember, you belong here.